This is the Criterion Creeps podcast, and tonight we're talking about Tati, Jacques Tati, nothing but Tati, because it's Tati week.
Ugh.
First up, M. HULOT'S Holiday, or Monsieur HULOT'S Holiday, from 1953. The tagline for this film: "It's laugh vacation time as Jacques Tati romps through the most gloriously mad lark ever to tickle the ribs of young and old alike."
What?
Don't be careful not to spit take there.
I wasn't expecting a tickle in the ribs. I've never heard that before.
What?
Tickle in the ribs?
Yeah, rib tickler. Come on.
Rib tickler?
Yeah.
Is this some kind of sex toy?
No, it's like grandpa talk.
Yeah, it is.
Well, this is like 50s taglines. Of course, it's like literally by grandpas at this point.
Well, if they had said like a knee slapper, I would have understood that.
Yeah.
Rib tickler, ew.
Synopsis from our good friends at Letterboxd. Monsieur Hulot, Jacques Tati's endearing clown, takes a holiday at a seaside resort where his presence provokes one catastrophe after another. Tati's masterpiece of gentle slapstick is a series of effortlessly well-choreographed sight gags involving dogs, boats, and firecrackers. It was the first entry in the Hulot series and the film that launched its maker to international stardom. What a great recap that synopsis was as well.
Yeah, it's really about the movie and not about other things.
Yeah. So, I actually have an old DVD of this that I picked up at a video store that went out of business. And it was like a Crazy Mike's video. It's got a nice big like Crazy Mike silver logo right on the ring of it. And it doesn't have a booklet, but it is the Criterion copy of it. It has a intro by Monty Python alum Terry Jones. And the one quote of his that I'll mention, because he really lays it on thick about how brilliant this movie is and all of Tati's movies. But the one thing I will say is like absolutely, I guess, interesting, I guess, because it goes against a lot of things when people talk about comedies now, is comedy could be both funny and beautiful is the thing he walked away with Tati movies. So like the one thing that's like always been an issue with like comedies in general is like when people make a comedy, like a modern day movie, no one's really worried about the look of the movie. Like they're not particularly well photographed. They're competently photographed. They look like slick movie productions. And they actually have a comedy look that's different than like, I don't know, like the way a superhero movie is shot is very different from the way a comedy is shot. Like a Seth Rogen type of thing. Like they have, or Judd Apatow movies, they have a look that they have. A Fairly Brothers movie, but it's like never like I don't think anyone's ever described like Dumb and Dumber as a beautiful movie.
I heard some guy the other day say Dumb and Dumber was like a Tati style beautiful comedy. Yeah, see, I left him speechless because he knows it's true.
Well, I'm just gonna let that one sink on its own. So I think I'd seen this holiday movie like years ago. This is one of those movies I rented at the library because I remember being like, oh, I have no idea what this is. I will rent it. I like don't remember it at all if I had rewatched it because this felt pretty fresh to me. Like I didn't recognize a single moment of it at all. So maybe I had rented it and it was just on and it left no impression. I can't say that I had too much of a different experience with this movie here. I don't know. This movie is long. Even at like it's only like an hour and a half, but it's so simple. Like it is. The story is it starts off with this like blaring nightmare train station sound, which is kind of nice. And it's a mad rush of people all going to the beach for the weekend. I guess like many communities have this experience, be it like here in Creepsville, there's like a crazy amount of traffic, a flow of people going to the mountains. In New York, people are always going, up to cottage country and stuff like that. That's what happens on these long weekends. People travel, and this is kind of what this is trying to capture. The comedy of people moving around and people kind of tripping over one another and these little moments that kind of come about. There's one little moment that I found like very stressful in a weird way, and it's like I think it's like this bus driver has this bus that's just like filled up with people. It's like packed like a sardine, and he like goes to drive, and there's this kid who's like sitting up front with him, and his head's like in the steering wheel.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, oh god, it's just so weird because it's just like, that kid is looking up at him like just waiting for him to start, but he shouldn't have his head there. But I was just like, holy fuck, that's like old style like steering wheels where it's like you give that a twist, that kid's neck's gonna go snap.
Is that not what happened?
No, he survived.
Okay, because the bus does turn. So
yeah. No, I think he made the kid move on. Okay. My main note about this movie here is this is a really mellow pastoral vibe. This movie is like really well photographed. Like it looks great. Like I was watching like the old DVD of this. I don't have the big 5-disc Blu-ray set of this that came out that re-released these 3 movies plus a few more of his stuff that have ladder spine numbers that we will get to one day. So this is early on before they had the rights to movies like Traffic and stuff like that. The other Traffic. But yeah, I mean, so this movie's got like a really nice look to it. I mean, it's fairly easy to watch, but it's definitely for me like the weakest of these 3 movies.
Unquestionably.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know. People regard this as like this total masterpiece. Roger Ebert actually has all 3 of these films on his great movies list, which I was like, that's like that doesn't happen very often, but they're all crammed in there. But like, I don't know, like I've kind of been a defender, I guess, of like comedies up to this point. It's like far as like qualities like that. Like I was trying to think about like in terms of like The Bank Dick, which is like actually like not as old as this either. Like or actually it's older. And like I think there's like elements to Bank Dick that like are still like they carry over quite well. But I found with this like there's like not a lot of material. Like it doesn't feel right. Like it doesn't feel like a comedy. It just feels like a nice movie. And I don't know. Nice is not really doesn't go along great with comedy for me. I like my comedy to be mean, I guess a little bit. So generally, like if I think of like This Is Spinal Tap or Life of Brian or even The Bank Dick, I like kind of like a causticness to my comedy. And this doesn't really. This seems like so well-meaning in its poking at people when it does. But I don't know. One of my notes here is so this is what people did before video games. Like this is like people like read newspapers and then like talked with one another. All the children, like fuck, there's this one kid in this movie, his legs are just shredded. This kid is so lean and muscular. Yeah, it's just like fuck, look at that kid.
I didn't notice anything like that.
But I noticed like it's
calling the cops.
Come on, it's like no, it's like all the kids are fit, whereas like now like kids be all soft and sausagey and like they don't spend any time outdoors. And then like as like you progress through like the different stages of like body types, which is actually a consistent thing through all these movies. It's like you have a huge variety of people. Like there's fat guys, short fat guys, fit guys, tall guys, lanky guys. There's just like a variety of humanity on display. So there's just like I don't know. There's not like this like weird quality when you watch most modern movies where it's like, oh, here's like a Michael Bay movie where everyone's jacked and then there's fat people, and it's like that's the quality of it. Where this feels like no, these are like real people that live in this community, and he's just setting up these. Tati is director, writer, and actor, lead as Mr. Hulo. He's just setting up these scenarios and things play out in this nice way. Anyway, that's enough of my kind of initial thoughts on Holiday here. RJ, what did you think of this picture?
Well, the first thing I'm going to say is, so I assume that you own all of these, so you just watched your copies of all of these, right?
I watched I watched Mon Oncle on Canopy, actually.
Okay, so I watched all 3 of these on Canopy,
right?
And I think you were saying how you watched this one on video and it wasn't the best. When you watch this on Canopy, there is like 30 seconds at the start of text explaining this movie and how this is like Canopy's version is a restored version, and it has like the film was restored, and then also it is like the preferred director's cut or something like that. Like,
Okay.
not that it has like, it doesn't have like 10 minutes extra or anything like that. I think it has like maybe 30 seconds different.
Okay.
But it was something about how it's the restored version that was the true intention. So
Okay.
I thought this movie looked great.
Yeah.
For like how I was watching it,
Well,
I was
like for me, like when I was watching the DVD of this, like I knew it didn't look as good as it would on Blu-ray, but like it looked like the photography of this movie is like amazing. Like it looks so nice.
I think if you had watched it on Canopy, you would have had like a crystal clear viewing experience. So that's your bad, but you're a bad dude, and I don't feel bad for you. So that's that. I just thought I would mention that it's interesting on Canopy. They had they have this bumper before it, how it's like I don't know, it was kind of like dramatic, where it's like, this is like something that was never gonna happen. It's like fully restored, and it was I was like, all right,
well,
it's not that weird.
Well, I know that when he died, he died of like an embolism. Is that pulmonary embolism. That's it. And like that was like in '82. His family was really concerned that these movies would just like vanish, like they would just die off, and no one would ever get to see them. And so like they like managed to like get to the right bank that like had the rights to this stuff, because sometimes banks wind up with movie rights, and they managed to like file like sort of like a letter, and then no one responded, and then they got all the movie rights, and then so they've been able to like, I think like Studio Canal has the rights to these movies internationally, and North America, I mean, I know Criterion's put them out, and it's got that Tati like 5 movie set that's out there. So anyway,
so I was just gonna say that, but so I was watching this movie, and I think it looks really good, and I think it's fine. And this isn't the right word, but when I was watching this, I was like, this is pointless, kind of.
Yeah.
And like not in the way that, not in the sense that like what that word means. It's not like, oh, this is like pointless. It's just like there's no real anything about this movie. It's just it like, I think they wanted the vibe where they set up the camera. It's like, look, it's a day in the life of this like small Amityville town where like they shot the Jaws movies. Is like the vibe I got the whole time. But it's like, look, here's the quirky ice cream salesman. Here's the pesky kid. There's an old pervert. Isn't it crazy? Like the old dude who's like staring at all the bikini babes. He's like, ugh. So I thought it was like that. I think this movie can be summed up in 4 bullet points. 1, goofy French bastards. 2, old man humor. 3, oblivious humor, which I think is one that's in a lot of these, where it's like the double take and then like the real thing, where they fake you out like twice, and then the real thing happens that they faked out 2 or 3 times. So it's kind of this thing where it's like, what the thing that's happening to the person in the movie, they're oblivious to, but you're seeing it, and that's why it's comical. And then my 4th bullet point is a lot of Mr. Beaning. These movies reminded me of Mr. Bean so much. I don't think they are the ace comedy master that Mr. Bean is, but I feel like this was a proto frame of Mr. Bean, like just kind of not even bumbling, but like fish out of water dude who's just kind of like going from place to place and getting into these crazy hijinks.
Right.
So I thought this movie was fine, but honestly, I didn't really like it that much, just because I was like, I don't care that about what's going on. And there's like a lot of scenes where this is more on the trilogy as a whole, but I feel like Toddy worked in a restaurant or something, because especially in PlayTime, we'll get there, but like in this one, there's a lot of like attention given to the restaurant in this, but it doesn't, like all you see is like the customers come in greeted by the manager, and then the customers that leave like all like, and then they see the manager also, and you see it's like the manager's like like they don't like say thank you, and he's just like but it was just like, I was like, why? Like who gives a shit about this like restaurant manager. I guess it fits in with this slice of life kind of thing that they're trying to do.
Right.
But there's stuff like that, and then there's scenes that like I don't think even make any sense. Like I thought that Mr. Hulot or whatever,
Hulot.
I thought he got on a bus and left at the end,
Mhm.
but then somehow he appears on like on the beach again, and he goes into the gardener's shack, and it's full of fireworks, and then all the fireworks go off, and I was really confused. I was like, wait a minute, I
See,
thought he left.
I think there's
and
a
then
guy who looks like him in this movie. Like,
Okay.
because there's a bit where like before he gets to the beach, like he's still fully dressed. There's a guy. He's like the bit with the towel. Do you? There's
Yeah.
like, and it's like,
Okay.
but it's not him,
Okay.
or but it's supposed to be him, but it's like editing wise, it doesn't make any sense. 'Cause it's
Yeah,
like,
that's what I mean. Like I was like, this
it's
doesn't
like,
make any sense.
yeah, it's like why is he at the beach already? I thought he's back at the thing still. Like from like if you're looking at it from like a
Yeah.
temporal standpoint of like the order of things happening, it's like why is he down at the beach? Like, then he chases around someone else, and you're like, is that like it looks like
Yeah.
Toddy, but it's like wait, that wasn't him, or he just didn't go. Like the pacing of it just seems a little wonky.
Yeah, exactly. And then so like there were a few things like that. It was just mostly the fireworks shack. I was like, I don't get what's going on. I was like, how did he get back here? Why is this thing full of fireworks? I was like, yeah, it looks cool, but like, why is it here?
The only
So-
like gag that I really wrote down for myself was there's the bit where Hulot sees like he like sees the one girl, the one that's catching everybody's eye. She goes to like the bathroom. She goes to one of the outhouses,
Yeah.
and then like he looks over and he sees there's a guy, and it looks like he's like peeking in, and he like walks over to him and kicks him in the ass, and then he like goes around the corner and he sees that he was like not looking through it at all, but he was like bending over to like take a picture of his family, and he just like runs away, and then like he's like standing around and he kind of like darts off, but then like the guy who just got kicked in the ass, he goes looking for him, and he sees this guy who's like happens to be brushing off his foot of some sand. He does, of course, like he's brushing off his foot. Obviously, he must have been the one that kicked me in the ass. And he starts giving him the eyes, and the guy's looking back at him. He's like, okay. And then he proceeds to like kind of get walked down, and he goes into an outhouse, and the guy just like follows him right up to it and starts looking through the diamond of the outhouse door. And I'm like, ugh, that's like a really strange moment, but it's like that's like the one that like stood out at me watching it this time. Everything else was kind of like it's there.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like pointless isn't the right word. It's just like whatever.
Yeah.
It's okay. I don't know. It's fine. It looks okay. It's not for me. I didn't really care for it at all.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. It's just like, yep, sure.
All right. Well, let's move on this bad boy.
All right. Next up, Mon Oncle from 1958. And this film's tagline, Mr. Hulot takes a precious, playful, and purely premeditated look at modern times. Genial, bumbling Monsieur Hulot loves his top-floor apartment in a grimy corner of the city and cannot fathom why his sister's family has moved to the suburbs. Their house is an ultra-modern nightmare, which Hulot only visits for the sake of stealing away his rambunctious young nephew. Hulot's sister, however, wants to win him over to her new way of life and conspires to set him up with a wife and a job. First up, this movie opens with this like amazing physicalization of opening credits, where it's just like all these like painted signs of like the credits, and it's just like, man, these are fancy. Like they look so good. And then of course like at that same time you're realizing like, man, this is like really well photographed, and then like the music starts, and like you're like, oh man, this whole movie is going to look like this. Like the colors and everything like that. It's like, fuck, this looks incredible. You get dogs, all these like scampy
So
little,
many doggos.
so many doggos running around, scamping about. Oh, so I was like, man, my dream booking here would be that like we'd get like a Tati 20-minute long short film about dogs, you know, and just like, and it's all it would be. You could even like maybe have Hulot doing some shit but with dogs, and just like having dog adventures, doing gags with dogs, and it would be like amazing.
You could tell he wanted to. There are dogs in all three of these movies.
Mm-hmm.
But this is the biggest presence.
Yeah, this is like because they open and close this bad boy.
Yeah.
But yeah, like my note here is like what a leap from black and white to color. So I was looking back. I watched both this and PlayTime 5 years ago. actually, just about. So they were like, Playtime has left like a definite mark in my mind when I think about this movie. Mon Oncle, I was kind of like, I know I've seen this movie, but I don't remember a lot about it. But then as soon as it started, it all started coming back to me. I'm like, oh yeah, it's this movie. It's all about the house and stuff like that, and the plastic factory. And I was like, right. And then like I remember being like, oh man, I really like this movie a lot. But then the movie, like, I don't know what it is about these Tati movies, but they always overstay their welcome. They just go on too long. Like 2 hours for a comedy is
for all of these.
For like, well, the first one's only an hour and a half, and it
feels like two.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't feel like a 90-minute or at all. And this is like, again, it's just like I don't know. The pacing to me is just like unearned. Like I feel that a lot of it gets redundant, as we'll discuss with Playtime, which I will make a case for being like an absolutely amazing movie, but with a flaw. So this Mon Oncle business here, it's got the like one scene in it that like I've seen as this really cool GIF of multiple Tatis coming and going from a building. Where they're like, it's like kind of like composited all the moments of him like walking up through this whole like complex, archaic, kind of like ramshackle building, and then you always see that thing pop up, and it's really nice. Whoever did that did a very good job of piecing it all together and making it look self-contained and like, wow, it's really novel. People should check it out. Yeah, so I mean, like, if you're a fan of like design and like modernist design, these movies like this and Playtime are just like a perfect encapsulation of like how crisp and clear 50s and 60s design were. Because you look at like whatever complaints Tati has with modernism and like consumerism, I can't even imagine what he would think of like 2018, like going out into the world and looking at advertising and fucking clothing, RJ. Like when you watch these movies, like everyone's clothes look amazing. They're fitted. They're like made with like real like fabric and not like the cheapest, shittiest crap you can imagine. It's not everyone's just wearing fucking cotton, like, and it's not real cotton. It's just like the synthetic crap. There's like real color. I mean, obviously this is a designed universe, so everything is like been calculated, but I don't think it's that far off from like what people could dress like. And like the signage and stuff like that on the buildings, like there's like on the school, the Ecole and stuff like that, and on the plastics building, like it's just like fucking like, oh, look how good that is. There's nothing. The world's so clean. And then like you have all these beautiful cars, which I just describe as metallic death traps. Because classic cars, as nice as they looked, there's a reason why we kind of shifted away from them, not only from a cost standpoint, but also the fact that when metal crashes, it like kills whatever's inside of it, which is you. So exploding plastic that explodes out and stuff like that, like we have now, it's a lot better. There's a reason why we have innovation. But then we also have these cars that like just look like weird little boxes, futuristic boxes we have. Whereas these things from the 50s, it's like, yeah, those look like cars. I don't know.
Big if true.
Big if true. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, I kind of like already said that I feel like this movie is like too long at 2 hours, but there's so much stuff to like watch and enjoy watching this movie. And I don't know if I'll kind of start talking about it now, but I became really aware, or like started thinking about this while watching it, but like how much of an influence these Tati movies have on David Lynch.
Interesting.
It's like, because I was thinking, I'm like, man, this is like Dougie. Like this is like all like it's all like particularly in Playtime with all the glass walls and stuff like that, and like his like the physical comedy stuff and him walking around the sculpture garden out front and stuff like that, and this sort of like this minimal kind of like performance, and it's just like this weird manner of walk, and particularly with the audioscape of all these movies, like the actual sound and stuff like that. Like so much attention is paid to the sound that you're hearing, like the sound of like machinery and electronics, steam. Like there's the one bit where like Hulo is working at the plastic factory, and there's this machine that's just like outputting steam like rhythmically, and
Yep.
I was like, fuck, this is like a racer head. So I mean, like all this like stuff, I'm like, and then of course I looked it up, and sure enough, there's like video of like David Lynch talking about how much he loves Jacques Tati's movies, and there's like one guy took a great screen cap or composited of like, there's the one bit in Mon Oncle where like there's a guy walking by with the red hose, like that red tubing, and there's like in Mulholland Drive, and I think also in Wild at Heart, there's like a guy always like, there's a couple times where there's a guy in the background wearing like kind of workman's clothes with a red tube over his shoulder in the exact same way. So it's like the connection is real.
Interesting.
Yeah, no, it's
Yeah, I never thought about that, but it makes sense.
It's like when after noticing it in Mon Oncle and watching PlayTime, I was like, holy crap, there's even more of it in that. Like it's like all over the place. Like all the office building stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We'll get there, but I think PlayTime, the sound design is even more so, and like I see why you're saying the David Lynch thing. Like that's a huge part of that movie is just the sound.
Yeah. And it's like a bit of that is like started here, just like in little bits and drabs, and then it's like totally cranked up in the PlayTime. Anyway, so yeah, those are some of my thoughts on Mon Oncle. RJ, what did you think of it?
Well, I'm gonna hit it to you like this, Jared. I think that, and we'll get there, but I think PlayTime is a better movie because of the very elaborate direction that went into that thing and all the sets and things. We'll get there. I actually think I liked Mon Oncle more. I actually liked Mon Oncle quite a bit. I thought it was a good show. So if HULOT'S Holiday was like oblivious humor, I think Mon Oncle is absurdist humor, because a lot of it is just like real crazy shit that's not like unbelievable, but it's absurd, where there are things that happen and you're just like, that's crazy. Isn't that crazy? But it's not in the old man style that I feel like the other one was. So I think this movie does a really good job with a lot of stuff like that. What was I going to say? I got to gather my thoughts here. I think my uncle, I think this one's a lot more grounded than either of the other two, and a lot more relatable in a sense where you have this guy and he's kind of like going around the world, where you see his at home life, you see his work life, and he doesn't fit in with a lot of these things. And they do a really good job of not like telling you that, but just showing you like the way that his family at the house kind of, the way they do things, like they're very routine style of like, when guests come, you turn the fountain on, and it's like all about presentation, and none of it is practical in any way. And I think that's like a huge part of all of his movies. But I think like PlayTime, you see it a lot too, but I think this one you actually see it more, where there are all these things that are completely impractical, but because of aesthetics and like social conceptions, like it's what's desired. Like those people, their house, it's everything about it doesn't work very well. Like it's completely like it doesn't make sense. Like why would you live there? Like even to the point where there's a nice moment where like their whole house is this robot, and it seems like really hard to navigate. And then when everyone leaves at night, the husband and wife watch TV, and I feel like that's a really good moment. But even to do that, like they pull their chairs outside and then they watch the TV inside because of the way their house is set up. And I thought that was a really good kind of, I thought that spoke more of the movie than like any other scene, because it's like this real simple thing that they're doing, but even that is complicated. And even in that, they're like trying to make it less complicated, even though it's like, we'll just have a TV in your house and sit and watch it. And I think that PlayTime has stuff like that too. But I think this movie has really relatable stuff. Like there was one scene where someone hands Hulo a sticky candy, and then his fingers are just sticky for like a scene after. And he's just like, and like, I feel like that all the time, because I'm really sweaty all the time. My palms are moist always. So like whenever I touch something, I always have it on my fingers for like ever. and it really bugs me. And I thought that scene was really relatable. But I think this movie has really subtle stuff too. Like there's a scene where Hello is walking through like this rubble and a brick falls over and he bends down and picks the brick and puts it back up to where it was. But everywhere around him is like fallen over brick and like concrete and stuff like that. So it's like this really weird subtle thing where it's like, why would you even bother? But it makes sense. It's funny. What else is cool? This one has some really cool design stuff, like the MC Escher house that Hulo lives in. This one has lots of those double fake outs where it's like you think the joke is going to happen and then it doesn't, and that's part of the joke. And then you think it's going to happen again and it doesn't, and that's part of the joke. But then it happens the third time. So it does a lot of those, and I think it actually works pretty good in this movie. And then two other things. Actually, one before that, I like the kids in this movie a lot, like the practical jokes that the kids play.
Oh yeah, so like I had like until I seen this movie, I had never like seen the fat kid faking a fender bender trick.
Yeah,
I think that's like so yeah, like good.
I thought that was really funny, but I really like the resolution of it, where the guy is like, "Hey, you little punk kids," and they get caught, and all they do is like walk through the bars of the fence and just like move into the field, and they're like, what are you gonna do? Like, I thought that was really funny. And then I really like their whistle game, where they like intentionally try to distract people so they walk into stuff. So I thought that was cool. And then the last two things I really liked, that lady vapes in this movie real hard. Like she puffs a cigarette and just like so much smoke comes out, and I was like, holy shit, she's vaping. And then one of my all-time favorite characters in the Criterion Creep so far is the fat greasy dude that makes jam crullers in like an abandoned field. I love that. I thought that was so funny, because it's like, you know what, if that was in my field where I grew up, I would be eating those jam crullers every day. So I really like that. But yeah, I think PlayTime is better because of how much is put into it, like a better film. But I actually think I enjoyed My Uncle more.
That's fair. I can see you coming from there. My couple of notes, because like again, it's like always hard to talk about comedies when you're reviewing them, because you're like explaining jokes. It's like but there's the bits like I liked where that snarling dog at that fish face looking under the counter or the table when he's looking when he's at the market. That was very cute, snarling little dog. And like one of like the nicest little moments I think in this whole movie is when he's going up into his apartment. There's a bit where he's opening up the door, and when he does, hears this bird make a call, and he's like trying to figure out. Every time he opens or closes it, here's this bird for a second. And then he realizes it's because when he opens up the door, the angle that the light is reflecting the sun hits the bird right on. And when the sun is on the bird, it tweets. So he does the nice thing, and he leaves the door open for the bird. And then the bird just fills the space. And like the bird keeps making noise like for like the whole rest of that sequence. And it's like, that's so good. It's just like I'm pretty positive, RJ, that there is not a moment like that in Avengers Infinity War. I would just I would go out on a limb and say that there's probably nothing quite like a Jacques Tati like performance at all anywhere, where there's like this like physicality. Because I mean, like, we haven't even talked about like the weird pacing and walking around of like everybody. Like, it's like, I'm not sure how calculated that is. Like, obviously with him, like he's like a mime, like he's like this like professional like clown almost, who's created this whole character and this persona, and he's like he has this particular way of walking, and when you see other people doing it, it looks off, but then you realize, oh yeah, he walks really weird, like particularly in the next movie. But yeah, it's just like all this like little thought and attention and stuff like that. These moments that are like maybe allowed to breathe too much. But like these things that actually are like, oh, this actually feels like a real story that like people want to like, I don't know, I would like to inhabit. Like it's like something that I'm like, oh, this is nice. And it's like this whole like ridiculous house, and this like all these ridiculous things all layered on top of one another, and how empty and hollow the like just subtle things where it's like, yeah, his apartment is this like dumpy little weirdo nightmare place, but it seems like a house. And then like the modernist house, which is like seems to have more and more taken over Like it's not like these films like were able to like kind of fight against what everything looks like, where it's like emptiness and cleanliness at every corner. Your house has to be designed in a particular way. He was like, why do you even think about that? It's just like, it has to have a house with something to sleep on and something like that. But anyway, I have another note here. Oh, that I love that the thing that really clicked this movie back into place when I was rewatching it was the water fountain sculpture. That like that, I think that's like so funny because it's like this thing that they turn on and off depending on if there's people that they have to impress, which makes it like it is the most pretentious thing possible. Like it is the definition of it because it's about make it just for show. That is all it's there for. They're like, it's not somebody we care about. They turn it off. Like it's not about like a practical thing. It is for show. And like, look how wonderful we are. Look at our rock garden, our precious rock garden. Oh no, God, there's dogs running around in it. It's going to ruin it all. But like, I was just thinking, I'm like, if this movie like came out now, I feel like, and it was like somehow it's a successful hit movie. Like the equivalent of that water fountain sculpture, it would be like in comic book stores, marketed toward people. It's like, oh man, I love that thing. It's like
ironic,
like Buddy Jesus from Dogma, like how people like have to like have some piece of shit, like that lamp from Christmas Story. The leg lamp, like just like that would be kind of what it is. But because it's this like 1958 French comedy, no one even remembers this movie, so it can't be touched by a crass commercialism, which is good. But yeah, any other thoughts?
No, I was surprised. I liked Mon Oncle quite a bit.
Cool. All right. Yeah. Next up, and for me, the main event, Playtime from 1967. This film has no tagline. Synopsis here. Clumsy Monsieur Hulot finds himself perplexed by the intimidating complexity of a gadget-filled Paris. He attempts to meet with a business contact, but soon becomes lost. His roundabout journey parallels that of an American tourist, and as they weave through the inventive urban environment, they intermittently meet, developing an interest in one another. They eventually get together at a chaotic restaurant, along with several other quirky characters. So, this movie is essentially broken up into 6 parts. There's the airport, there's the offices, there's the trade exhibition, there's the apartments, there's the royal garden, and the carousel of cars. And it's like pretty like fine. Like these are very specific beats. And I would say, unfortunately, a lot of the movie's runtime is set in one of these, the royal garden, the restaurant sequence, because I like, so watching this again, this is a movie that like really like kind of blew me away when I watched it the first time. Like just like on a visual level, like I have never seen a movie that looks like this. Like it looks so amazing to me. I think I'd have to double check. I think it's the like most beautiful movie in the Criterion Collection that we've watched to this point. Like just like the cinematography, the colors, like it's nuts. Like it just doesn't make sense to me how this movie can exist the way that this thing looks. And did you happen to look up like the history of this movie?
I didn't know No, I heard there was some kind of troubled past, but
so this movie was a failure financially. Like it flopped. I guess like it didn't make its money back. But here, this is from Wikipedia about the production. The film is famous for its enormous, specially constructed set and background stage, known as Tativille, which contributed significantly to the film's large budget, said to be 17 million francs, and that's in like 1967. And he spent years making this movie because the gap between Mon Oncle and this, it's like 9 years. So he put a lot of time and effort into this thing, and I'm sure he would have liked to have it come out sooner than it did. The set required 100 construction workers to construct along with its own power plant. Budget crises and other disasters stretched the shooting schedule to 3 years, including 1.4 million francs in repairs after the set was damaged by storms. Tati observed correctly that the cost of building this set was no greater than what it would have cost to have hired Elizabeth Taylor or Sophia Loren for the leading role. Budget overruns forced Tati to take out large loans and personal overdrafts to cover ever-increasing production costs. As PlayTime depended greatly on visual comedy and sound effects, Tati chose to shoot the film on the high-resolution 70mm film format, together with a complicated, for its day, stereophonic soundtrack. To save money, some of the building facades and the interior of the O'Reilly?
Come on.
Is it Orion? I think it is. Set were actually giant photographs. The photographs also had the advantage of not reflecting the camera or lights. The Paris landmarks Barbara sees reflected in the glass doors are also photographs. Tati also used real life-size cutout photographs of people to save money on extras. These cutouts are noticeable in some of the cubicles when Hulo overlooks the maze of offices, and in the deep background in some of the shots at ground level from one office building to another. And the one thing that this mentions when I was reading about this movie, and I was like thinking back through like all these movies, is like he doesn't use close-ups at all.
I guess, yeah.
Like it's like weird to like think about that. Apparently he found them like in bad taste. Like that's like one of his things. But it's like, yeah, because his thing is like about the body. It's about the physicality of it, and he wants to see the whole body. And when you're shooting 70mm, it's like you have a lot of film. You can shoot a whole lot of a person and get way more out of it. So this movie is like always shot at this kind of distant level. Like you never really get particularly close. And like you know how people get really worked up about 70mm like film nowadays? They're like, oh, I saw Phantom Thread in 70mm. I mean,
Phantom Menace,
Dunkirk, not Django.
Any
Unchained.
Quentin movie,
all the Quentin movies now, they're all gonna be 70mm, and everyone's gonna go, oh boy, I saw that and that, blah blah blah. Well, I mean, this movie really earns its bigness, I think. Bigly, man. Yeah. So anyway, yeah. Again, this is like one of the most beautifully shot movies I've seen. And holy crap, I am so now in the mind of Tati in David Lynch movies, because there's like so much stuff, like all those scenes in like Twin Peaks and his movies where there's like these long drawn out moments of characters like walking in a space and leaving and then coming back in real time, and you're like, why is this being filmed this way? Like the famous broom scene in The Return. There's like the old man banker at the end of the Twin Peaks TV series, the season 2 one. There's this old man slowly making his way across the space. All his movies have these moments, and I'm always like, oh, it's just like he doesn't even probably think about it anymore. He's like kind of incorporated it into his own like his own method, his oeuvre, and it's just like, yeah, no, it's like he's like so absorbed Tati, and like I was like watching this and I was like, oh fuck, this like totally like all the dicey stuff is completely PlayTime, and yeah. So anyway, there's this like
there's another. Sorry to interrupt. There's another David Lynchian thing that I thought was really funny. Was when the lady's trying to take a picture of the flower stand and like people keep interrupting her.
Yes.
There's one lady that like walks in between the flower stand and stops. And then she looks over and she sees the lady's trying to take a picture of it. And then she kind of looks back, and then she looks and she like has like this kind of gross look on her face. She's like, really? And then she sits there for like, I don't know, like 5 seconds and just stands there and just like, and then like walks by. And that, like, now that you mention it, that really reminds me of Lynch stuff, because I thought that scene was really funny, because like not even the whole scene, like, or the scene as a whole, just that one moment where the lady just stands in front of it. She's just like, what are you gonna do? She's just standing there. She's like, what? So anyways, but yeah, Lynch stuff.
He's in there. Yeah, and like I said, like the ambient room noise hums in this movie, like just like suggesting like the machinery behind those glass, concrete, metal walls and stuff like that. Yeah, there's just like so many. Like the first hour of this movie is like really, really good. Like I was like sucked totally into it. There's just these like there's like bits like where it's like him like having to sit while waiting for a man to walk down the hall that he's meeting, and he's like, there's like the kind of like the security guy who's like kind of, oh, just keep seated, he's not here yet. We just have a scene where he's just walking, and he's like kind of getting fidgety, and then he waits too long, and then the guy's waiting a second. He's like, oh geez, I gotta get up. It's like stuff like that. It's like it plays out. because of like, I don't know if it's because of between the cinematography and like the crazy architectural space that he has to play with, he's like adapted his like what he's doing with, say, like back in like in the Holiday one. Whereas like that's just like him like kind of more or less probably figuring out movies and how to make a feature length film. Whereas this point, like he's been making movies now for 20 years. He only ever made 6 movies, but by this point, it seems like he's like at like a peak of like his film craft, and he's just like, hey, let's just shoot this stuff and make like humor out of like these ridiculous spaces that we make for ourselves that are totally impractical and alienating and dehumanizing. And so he's got like even more to go with, and like he's building on all these themes from Mon Oncle. And I've seen like some reviews at the time when this movie came out, kind of like said that some of the like his critiques of modernism might have been more relevant when he wrote this like in the late 50s, like in the Manon Cole era, and so by 1967 it was like played out. But like, I mean, we're watching this movie in 2018, and like I think it's like the horrors of modernism and consumerism are like far worse, and like no one challenges these things at all anymore. Like people are just kind of going along with it. Even people who like would identify as like, you know, anarcho-leftists, they're all still posting on Facebook about watching fucking Infinity War and stuff like that. Like, like they're all like, they can't wait. They're really excited that Disney and Fox might have a merger so they can watch their superheroes united again. And now Comcast is going to come along and break up the party and ruin it for everyone. No more Fantastic Four from the Russo brothers. Nuts. Anyways, yeah. So back to this movie. Yeah. So one thing I've also came to mind. Have you ever read any Chris Ware comics before? Like the guy does like Acme Novelty Library, Jimmy Corrigan, like that. Those like indie art comics. Okay. No. Yeah, there's no movies based on his stuff because there's no way you can adapt his comics as movies and make them as interesting as they are as comics. They are 100% stories that exist purely as comics. Well, if you look him up, do a Google image search, folks, if you don't know who Chris Ware is. His stuff is like kind of about, I mean, like when I think of his comics, it's kind of like humanity is prisoners of our own forms and systems, was the note I made of myself. Like he has this cold, calculated, super precise way of drawing everything, and he applies it to every single thing he draws, from book design to like his actual comic books, where it's just about people kind of going through lives, and he breaks down like the minutia of life in these like really like insanely detailed like ways where everything, moments are split into halves and stuff like that. Like it's really kind of hard to explain without like actually showing you and kind of walking you through kind of how his comics work. But it's like he draws it all by hand. It looks like it's done by machines, but he's like kind of figure out this whole style of drawing. And like I was thinking about kind of like how that's how this movie frames a lot of the action, because it's like everything's in these panes. Like there's like a bit where it's like literally panels like on a side of a wall where you're watching from across the street, like all these people having dinner at night before they go out for the evening kind of thing, having drinks, pre-gaming before a night at the town. And it's just like this camera kind of passing back and forth between these like rooms on the side of this building. And you can't hear anything. There's not even word balloons to know what they're saying inside. But yeah, like that, Chris Ware is another like kind of reference point. I wonder if he's like a fan of these Tati movies. He might be, because he's a bit of a grandpa.
Like you,
like me. Yeah, one of the bits that I thought was like pretty great and jumped out at me in this movie, watching it again, was the little old lady selling the flowers in the middle of materialist modernist hell. She's selling these flowers, and then of course like I started thinking, I'm like, holy crap, this like whole like area, this Tativille, there's no trees. There's like there's no like vegetation, there's no grass. It's just like lampposts for trees and like synthetic trees, and it's like, oh, there's like some real, here's like a little old lady selling flowers, and people are like, oh, how novel. And it's just this concrete hell, and it's like I don't know, no green strip, which is like now a big concern, of course, with urban planning nowadays. But like, yeah, I mean, in this particular world, it takes that idea much further into this thing where it's like, yeah, you don't even need that. You just need vacuum cleaners and doors that don't slam, that sort of thing.
I thought that stuff all was real practical. Vacuum cleaner with the headlights?
Yeah.
Why not? A lady even mentions that while they're getting the demonstration. She says, oh, how practical.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, and of course, the other bit before I hand it off to you, because I've got other notes too. But I really enjoy the excitement of American tourists seeing consumer product exhibitions of American things in France. Like that's such a real thing about people who get really excited about being able to eat the food they can eat at home but abroad.
Yeah. Hey, I can speak to that. When I was in China, I went to a McDonald's, and it was wild. It was wild, man, and I wouldn't trade that experience for anything.
Did you have what did you have?
Big Mac and fries.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't go in there. A couple guys that we were with went in and just got like 30 meals, and they just brought them out. So I had that. You know what, Jarrett? Tasted pretty much the same. It was wild. That's what I'm telling you. Anyways, did you throw it to me?
I guess so. I mean, I guess I could also say so. I like, from the airports bit, like the offices, the trade exhibition stuff. I love all that stuff. The apartments, it's such a come down because like the first bit has so much movement, and so when we get to the apartment bit, it like slows down quite a bit. And it shifts gears because now it's night, and so you have this like kind of like you're just kind of like watching like sort of like these gags and stuff like that from like a bit of a removal, so you're not like really kind of in it. But then of course it goes back into kind of this big flow when it goes to the nightclub scene, the Royal Garden, and it's way too long. It's like God, like over a half hour of like kind of the same sort of restaurant jokes that you were mentioning before in Holiday, and like there's like he does, and I don't know, like it could be condensed for me, as things because like I mean the whole idea is that you're building up the breakdown of everything, like people's clothes are breaking down, part of the ceilings are collapsing, lights aren't working, and it keeps mounting and mounting and mounting. It seems like people are just like fine, they're having a good time, and it goes on, and part of the thing too is like because it really like steps away from Tati as like the character that you're following, and it's just a bunch of people that you're just like okay, this is going to go keep going, right? And so I mean to me it's like kind of like I kind of checked out at that point when I watched it, and I'm like oh yeah, I remember this is like way less interesting than that first hour where I was like nonstop just like totally sucked into like those skylines, those buildings, and then you get like kind of like the final sequence, which is like the big go home spot, with this magical lights coming on, street lights sort of thing. But I don't know. I'll hand it off to you, RJ, for now. What did you think of that playtime?
So you want to know what I think about playtime, hey? So I think that, like I said earlier, I actually think I liked Mon Oncle more, but I think Playtime's a better movie for a few reasons. Like the amount of this is very obvious to anyone who watch it. The amount of detail in like the sets and all that stuff, and how it's orchestrated and like how it's synchronized, everything like it's choreographed really in a really nice way. Like everything flows perfectly, like exactly how it's supposed to. And I think for that alone, it's kind of like an amazing piece of cinema. Like just the way that Tati kind of put it all together. It's like, it's real impressive the way a lot of this stuff works. I think you touched on most of the things that I really liked as well. Like I think the office stuff is pretty cool. I like the flower shop. I like those weird contrasts that they have. I also though think that this thing kind of, like all of them, it overstays its welcome. Yeah. It's just too long.
Yeah, 2 hours and 5 minutes.
A huge chunk of that is because you get about, what is it, like 30 minutes in that restaurant?
Yeah.
About 30, 35 minutes. And it's like you were saying, it seems like you know what they're going for. It's this breakdown of stuff, but it's just too much. It's like you could wrap this up a little bit earlier, even though there's scenes there that I actually like quite a bit, like where that one table keeps getting presented the same piece of fish, and it keeps getting like
seasoned,
seasoned, like like by like 8 people. And then there's another scene I really like where one of the drunks gets put into one of the chairs. Like it's like a cone chair made of wires, and he falls over, and they pick it up and then they put him inside so he like won't fall over anymore.
Yeah.
I related to that. I was like, that's fun. So there's scenes in the restaurant that I like too. And I don't know. I think Tati must have just either really loved restaurants or he worked there until he was a film director or something.
I guess France is a cafe culture. So I guess he's maybe spent a lot of time thinking about stuff and going, oh man, what if that happened right now? Shit.
What if an American came in and wrecked the place?
And it probably happened lots.
But yeah, and then other than that, like I do really like the weird sterile environment, like all the business industry type stuff that's there. That's pretty cool. I think the sound design is really special in this movie. Like the way it's so exaggerated and like so much attention is put to it. I think that's also like a huge mark on this. But I don't know, man. I don't actually have a whole lot to say about Playtime. I enjoyed watching it. I think it's a very cool movie because of how much is put into it. I don't like it as much as the second one, but I do think it's better just because of all of those details that's in there. So it's a good show. I just don't have a whole lot to say.
Right. Yeah. I mean, to me, like this is just like kind of like almost borders on like an art film more than anything else. Like as far as like its big film qualities and stuff like that. Like people always lose their shit over like a Matthew Barney and stuff like that, and like kind of like where it's like really making real art, whereas this is like still trying to make this comedy, but he's like kind of like decided like I'm gonna make this like crazy. I'm gonna build a city, and I'm gonna make a fake town to make a comedy in, which is like ridiculous because it's like he's moved up through this world of like from the Holiday where he shot it like on location, where there's actually a bronze statue of him there now. Using
it wasn't there for the movie?
No, it didn't pre-exist before he shot a film there. So then Mon Oncle, where he keeps building up these like stakes, where it's like from like real location to building a house, like having this like crazy modernist house, to an entire city. That's like, I don't know, it's like a monstrosity, I guess. Yeah, there's like the one photo, like there's a one bit, like there's a still that like I'm like, fuck, that's so good, and it's like brutal, and it's like at the travel agency it's a brief bit where you see all these posters advertising all these places you can travel: Hawaii, Berlin, Japan, and in every single one they have like a photo of the location but with one of those modernist buildings in it. And they're all the exact and they're the exact same building over and over and over again, and it's like travel to here, and it's just like, yup, everywhere you're going to go, it's all going to look the same eventually. And then there's the one part, actually a neat little thing. Behind the travel agent, there's like a map of the world, a world map. And it's actually the exact same world map design from Manon Cole in the plastics office, where it's like emanating from a point in France with all these points spreading out across the globe and exporting itself. The same logo is used in both those things. And I don't think it's like slightly different, but it's the same idea. And I'm like, oh, neat, that's kind of nice. Attention to detail. One of the other good worthless pieces of shit design things that I think is super funny is the Greek pillar garbage can.
Oh yeah, it's like the tagline, isn't it? It's like throw it away like a Greek or something like that. Yeah. It's pretty funny.
It's great. It's like, man, that's like, yeah, get rid of anything that looks different than modernism. And then there's like another little bit, I think, like behind that, the logo of the globe. Graphic design, there's like where he's like kind of looking at the behind scene of it, like kind of behind the board, and you just see like the rolling chair and the feet of the guy who's like responding to all the people booking travel stuff, and he's just, all you see is his feet sliding around, and it's just this like little detail, like you were mentioning, like all the details in this movie, like you can just like pick up on different people in the background and they're doing something, like everyone's got a little role that they're fulfilling somewhere in the background. There's like the one even like bit where his old army buddy is like, once is trying to find him. I think it's the army buddy, and he keeps seeing guys that look like like they're dressed as Hulot, but they're not him. Like there's like the black guy, and it's just like, but he's got the hat and the jacket, and he's tall, and like they're also doing like the Hulot walk, but it's like slightly off because they have never done it really before outside of this movie, so they don't have quite the mannerism, so it's kind of this weird exaggeration of it. But it's like at that point I was like, oh yeah, he does have that weird walk. And then you start like noticing how everybody kind of has like weird little walks and stutters and stuff like that, and they sometimes are just stopped and they completely just start walking. It's a magical kind of movie, I think.
Wow, I don't think I've ever heard you say anything like that on this podcast ever. It's really just magical, you know.
It's really magical. It's got
it is.
Much
I'm
stuff,
bugging you, but it actually is like it's pretty cool to see all this stuff kind of put together.
And then there's like, I think there's like the other one too is like this guy getting on a bus with his newly bought lamp that he got from the trade exhibition, and then the guy gets up behind him and he grabs the pole thinking it's like the post on the bus. It's quite good. And then you get some follow up to that, even when he's like, he doesn't realize he's about to tip over, and Tati or Hulot grabs it and has like steady it for him, and then it works out when they both hold it, and it's just like, yeah, that's nice. What a great little attention to detail it all is. Yeah, no, I think Playtime's amazing, but like I said, like there's
pretty cool.
It does have like that like quarter of the movie where it's like, okay, get on with it. So I mean, it's not a perfect movie, but it's got like all that, like the stuff that's going for it is like unlike anything I've seen.
Yeah, I'm with you, dude.
Nice, dude. So so there's gonna be some people who are not with me.
I can imagine there's quite a few people who don't like Playtime, but
all of these,
or all of them,
any of that Tati business. So gotta get started. The first two here are for Monsieur Hulot's Holiday. Llewyn Davis, 1 star. I don't really understand how these are considered jokes or gags. Things just sort of happen. I mean, there are some legitimate jokes and gags, but most of them are just, well, things.
Yeah. Is that not what all of life is? Just things?
Things. Moments.
Yeah.
P.S. Palace, 1.5 star. I don't want to be the one to say this, but Monsieur Hulot's Holiday is not on par with Mr. Bean's Holiday, which may come as a direct descendant of it. I know I'm supposed to say that humor is subjective and Hulot may be someone else's cup of tea. But I would be challenged to find a single person who could laugh even once during the runtime of this comedy. The most the movie has going for it is a couple of sputtering car sound effects, which wear out their welcome really fast, while the rest of the predictable gags go to show that all good humor has an element of pain, something that Tati is unwilling to inflict on any party. I would recommend Monsieur Holiday Hulot to everybody who watched every Frames of Painting video on Edgar Wright and thereby thinks that the Cornetto movies are the funniest of the century, if not ever.
What? What? I don't really understand where he jumped to Edgar Wright to start going.
Don't know.
I never once thought of Edgar Wright watching these movies.
No.
They're not even the same country.
I guess people think because they're comedies, so they're the same.
Oh.
So Mon Oncle, 1 star from Heretic. Worst thing Tati ever did. So of course it won an Oscar.
Did that movie win an Oscar? Best foreign film?
Maybe.
Cool.
Check it.
I'm down with that. All right.
Ryan gave this 1 star. Man, I didn't get it. Every once in a while I chuckled, but for the most part I was just bored. I didn't really understand much of the plot or sequence of events. I recognized what the central idea was supposed to be, but it just gets beaten into you for 2 hours. Why are this guy's family so tech hungry? Why isn't he? I just didn't get it, and maybe I'll revisit it again someday, although to be honest, that's unlikely. But for now, I was quite underwhelmed. Playtime is an amazing film, and this just didn't measure up for me at all. Transitioning to Playtime, haters. Sean Heenum, 0.5 star. Sorry, I tried. I don't like anything about this movie. I didn't laugh once, and it only made me smile 1 time. I'm sure I must be missing something, and I'm sure I'll make somebody mad with this rating, but I'm not going to lie about it and pretend I didn't hate this movie. My first Tati. Perhaps he is not for me.
There's so much rhyming with Tati.
Tati.
By the way, this won Best Foreign Film in 1958,
Oh.
and it's sandwiched between two other Criterion movies we've covered, Knights of Cabiria and Black Orpheus.
Whoa.
Yeah, Big Fellini's on this list a lot. Same with Bergman.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's a lot of Criterions on here that
in the foreign winners, yeah.
Yeah, in the foreign section. But yeah, it's Knights of Cabiria, then My Uncle, and then Black Orpheus.
Look at that.
Three years in a row, baby.
Yeah, the Criterion sweep. And then finally, Hannah K, 1 star for PlayTime. A few years ago, I watched Monsieur Hulot's Holiday as part of my very first movie challenge, and I didn't care for it at all. To quote from that review, what I ended up with was 7 slapstick gags spaced out through an hour-and-a-half movie, and intersped with 15-minute scenes of people carrying around ice cream cones, setting up beach umbrellas, and quietly sitting drinking tea. Tati's style of humor is so subtle and slice of life that it barely registers for me at all as comedy. Playtime appears to have just plopped a camera down in various businesses and let it run. Wow. I enjoy people watching, but if I'm going to people watch, I'll just go out and do that. I'm not going to watch a movie about people watching that hasn't even chosen the most interesting parts to show me. Whoo, boy. Okay.
So what is his problem?
Hannah K apparently just didn't think there's anything remarkable about how this movie was shot at all. Just thought it was at various businesses.
Wow.
It just happened to look that way.
What are their favorite movies?
I don't know. You can tell me.
Dang it. Bobby.
Don't get sucked into these people.
These people. I'll look into it. Was that for Playtime or My Uncle?
That's Playtime. It's Hannah K is the person.
Hannah K.
Yeah.
All right, I'll look into it. H
at the end, H at the beginning. Hannah. Palindrome style.
All right, Hannah K is from California. Their favorite movies: Jarrett Pick, Casablanca; Jarrett Pick, Love Actually; Jarrett Pick, Annie Hall; and Jarrett Pick, Moulin Rouge.
Ooh, boy.
Oh, this lady just watched Akira, and she gave it a 3.5 out of 5.
Wow.
So if you're listening to the preamble, you can hear what we have to say about Akira.
And anime in general.
And anime in general. Oh, this lady just watched Isle of Dogs and gave it 3 stars. I'm skeptical. I'm digging deep. I'm looking at their 5-star films now. Dr. Horrible's sing-along song.
Stop.
Spider-Man. Ooh, Jarrett Pick, Chicago. Chicago. Other things, movies that are actually good. Holes. Vanilla Sky. My Cousin Vinny. What the fuck?
It's late.
All right.
It's late, RJ.
All right.
It's time to go home.
All right.
Okay, we're done here. Jacques Tati. We'll see him again one day. And actually, at that point, we should also watch that The Illusionist animated movie, because that's like an adaptation of one of his unfinished screenplays, I believe.
The Edward Norton film with Paul Giamatti?
Yeah, that one and the same.
The Illusionist?
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Cool.
There's an animated movie, too. Anyways, after the break, nothing really violent happens to anybody in Tati movies, so RJ and I will walk around in a mannered fashion until the end sequence
Until you
starts. Yep.